Hi there, welcome to today's session of Every Mark Matters with Mr. McDonald. Today we're having a look at Edexcel History Paper 3, USA Problems at Home and Abroad, and obviously this is the paper where we look at the Civil Rights Movement and the war in Vietnam. Our question of the day and questions of the day, we're doing 3A, B, C and D, but feel free to skip through to specific questions. If you're confident with how useful questions, skip it out. Confident with 3C and 3B, feel free to skip that bit of the video out, but almost certainly watch 3D, as that is the toughest question on the paper. Right, let me show you this then. Right, so let's have a look at this one here. So we've got the command phrase. So our command phrase of the day is how useful, and that means you need to analyse the sources. Our focus with this question is Freedom Summer, right? So what do you want to annotate the word focus and think about what do you know about Freedom Summer? Press pause, I'll see you shortly. Okay, right, so I'm hoping you've had time to annotate the focus, so let me show you. So here's some of my knowledge, right? So they're aiming to improve voter registration. They are teaching, capital T, Black Americans how to pass. But there's immense white opposition. Three volunteers are murdered. And the KKK begin a campaign of terror. Okay, right. So there's our focus, there's a command phrase, and we are having a look at our second order concept that in this instance is sources B and C. To get 6 to 8 marks out of this, you must refer to contents, provenance, and own knowledge. You must do that for both sources. Own knowledge or contextual knowledge. Okay, this is an 8-mark question. That means you must spend 10 minutes writing down 2 paragraphs. That's 1 paragraph on source B, 1 paragraph on source C. Let me show you success criteria for this question. Right, so this is a challenging question. Alright, but let's have a look at it. So again, what I want to do is I want to break this up into Jack judgment analysis and contextual knowledge, and what we have is we've got level 1, level 2, level 3. Okay, right, so first and foremost, for level 1, I'm just going to do a judgment for all 3 levels, then analysis and so on. So for level 1, what you need to simply have is, it's just a simple reason. For your first one, then for level 2, that's a summary of one source. And then for level 3, it's a summary of both sources. And this is important, you're using both of those summaries to explain why it's useful. So your judgment is basically saying why it's useful. And everyone always struggles with that first sentence. I always say just give a summary of what you can see or what it says or shows. Okay, in terms of the analysis then, so a simple quote or paraphrase. But there's no inference. Okay? In level 2, there's 1 quote plus an inference. Or what you've done is you would have mentioned about the provenance. And if you do that for both sources, that would be 5 out of 8. Okay? but we don't care about 5 out of 8, we care about 8 out of 8. That's 2 quotes, plus inferences, plus provenance, and can you fit in any limitations of the provenance? And then finally, for contextual knowledge, for level 1, there's absolutely no knowledge. For level 2, you have got some vague knowledge. And then for level 3, you have relevant contextual knowledge. I'm just going to put CK. So that's the 10-minute question. Press pause. I'll see you shortly. Have a go at giving me 2 paragraphs to tell me how useful sources B and C are for an inquiry into freedom summer. Press pause. I'll see you shortly. Okay, right. Let's have a go then, shall we? All right. So, just to begin with, I'm just going to read out my answer. And what I'm going to do is, again, I'm just going to be using judgment, analysis, contextual knowledge. Let's have a go. One reason why source B is useful is because it shows the positive impact of Freedom Summer had on Black Americans. So again, all I've done there is I've just done a summary. Alright? And that is a judgment mark. Okay? For example, in the source it says, we began to realise that we did have the right to do things, which suggests that Freedom Summer empowered Black Americans to believe in themselves and seek out change. So there's my quotation from the content. Here's my inference. It also goes on to say we call all the volunteers who came here freedom fighters and wanted to be freedom fighters too. Right, yet again, there's my quotations from the content. This suggests that the author felt inspired by the volunteers and recognised the violence that they faced and how they continued on regardless. And there's my inference. So all I've done there is I've done 2 quotes and 2 inferences. I know from my own knowledge that the aim of Freedom Summer was to improve voter registration in Mississippi. They did this by teaching Black Americans how to vote, but had limited impact with only 1,600 registrations and over 17,000 who took part. So again, there's some subject knowledge. Have I got precise knowledge? Yes, I have. 17,000 took part. Now I forgot to tell you something when I went back to here. Is you've got no knowledge, what you're going to do is you're going to steal from the interpretations. Alright? And that's precisely what I've done there, and that's exactly what I wanted to show you, is it's relevant knowledge, and all I've done is I've just stolen it from the 2 interpretations. Cheeky. Right. So, this makes the source... source B is written by Lenray Gandhi. That's the author of the source. I've stated who he is. There's some provenance. Who was 9 during Freedom Summer. This makes the source useful, lovely phrase there, because he has first-hand experience and saw the impact of Freedom Summer from his own community's perspective. So again, there's my provenance. The purpose of source B is to inform as it is part of a documentary. So again, I've mentioned about why it was made. This makes the source useful. Use that phrase again. As it is reliable and with the intention to inform and educate is likely to be accurate. So again, there's my analysis of the provenance. It doesn't necessarily matter what order you do this in, by the way. So if you started with the provenance, then content, inferences, then knowledge, you can do. However, Gandhi was 9 during Freedom Summer and an elderly adult at the time of the writing of the source, which limits the usefulness of the source, as his knowledge at the time could have been influenced by his peers or relatives, or his knowledge when writing could have been influenced by events after. So there's the limitations. So assuming that I've done that for both paragraphs, I'm knocking on the door of 8 out of 8. Let's have a look at the second paragraph. One reason why source C is useful is because it shows the violent response to freedom summer. So again, there's my summary. And that gives me the judgment mark. For example, it says church used as a freedom school was burnt to the ground, so which suggests that the campaign of terror towards volunteers to intimidate and put off the white volunteers from the north. So again, what happens is there's my quotes from the contents, and then here's my inference here. It also goes on to say, missing car found, no sign of 3 civil rights workers, which implies 3 volunteers have been kidnapped by members of the white community, likely to be the KKK. So again, there's my inference. From my own knowledge, I know that these volunteers were Michael Schwerner, Andrew Goodman and James Cheney. They were kidnapped and murdered by the KKK, so you can see, there's my CK. It became a national scandal after no charge was found. Source C is a formal record made by the organisers of Freedom Summer in 1964. This makes, so I've said what it is, I've said when it was. This makes the source useful as it is likely to be accurate. It's likely to be highly accurate and honest, as they are going to need to use it to inform the police. Also, as it is made by the organisers, they are likely to know the wider picture across the state, making it extremely useful. Although, here's my limitations. Although it shares the events of 2 weeks that June, not the entire summer, which limits its usefulness. So I'll go straight back to here. Have I got a summary of both sources? Yes, I have. Have I got quotation inferences? Yes, I have. Have I got provenance and the limitation of the provenance? Yes, I have. Have I got relevant subject knowledge just at the bottom of my success criteria? Yes, I have. So that out of 8, ladies and gents, is 8 out of 8. You use that technique, you're going to get 8 out of 8. Right, let's move on to the next one. Okay, so I'm not going to spend too much time breaking up this question, but do you want to press pause and have a quick look at interpretation 1 and interpretation 2? So all I want to do with this question is, again, I'm not going to look at the focus. All I want to do is I just want to make sure that you understand for this question, our second order concept for this question is interpretations only. Alright, and that means to get full marks, to get 4 out of 4, writing down 1 paragraph in 5 minutes, all you need to do is simple. So here's my success criteria. You need to summarise interpretation 1. Quote. Summarise interpretation 2. Quote. Easy. Whilst I've got you here, what I'll do is I'll just do the next question. Right. So, this is a harder question. So again, it's the same focus. And again, you're saying why with 1 paragraph, but our second order concept is ever so slightly different. Alright, so this time it's interpretations plus sources. Alright, so what you need to do is you need to say why they have different views. And again, if I just go back to my success criteria here, because we're going to get full marks here, so let me show you. You need to match them up before you write anything. And interps, you need to say. One reason why is because historians use different sources. Historians use different sources. I like the phrase weighting. And then all you do is you simply say interpretation 1 uses and why. Interpretation 2 uses and why. So all you're doing is you're just explaining which source they've used and why. Alright? And ideally, to get full marks, because you will get a harsh examiner, you need quotes from the sources. Alright? Right, so 2 exceptionally easy questions there. Set yourself a 10-minute timer, have a go at telling me what is the difference between the views and why do they have different ones. 10 minutes, put everything away, and I'll see you shortly. Okay, right, let's go. Right, so easy question. 4 out of 4, we're going to get 4 out of 4 in the real thing. Let's have a look at how we do that. Interpretation 1 suggests that a freedom summer was a success for black and white Americans who took part. There's my summary, there's my first mark. For example, it says Mississippi Freedom Summer achieved a number of great things. There's my second mark. Whereas interpretation 2, so I've used whereas as my connective, whereas interpretation 2 suggests that Freedom Summer was a negative experience. There's my third mark. It says Freedom Summer was a bitter experience for all civil rights workers. There's my fourth mark. Perfect. 4 out of 4. All I've done is, if I just go straight back to my success criteria, is have a summarised, yes, have a quoted, yes, have a summarised, have a quoted. Easy, easy, easy. Right, let's go back to, let's have a look at this bottom one here. One reason why they give different views is because historians put different weighting on different sources. Right, so by simply saying that, I have got 2 marks. And I love this little phrase. One reason why they give different views is because they put different weighting on different sources. So yes, I am simply saying that they use different sources, but I just think it's a really academic way of saying it. Feel free to steal that from me. Interpretation 1 has likely used source B because it says the summer was a turning point, which supports the author's claims. So again, there's my third mark. Whereas interpretation 2 has likely used, grammatical error, used source C as it says the 2 volunteers take her to a bus stop by 4 white men who say if you make the speech tonight, you'll never return here, never leave here, which demonstrates the violence and threat faced by civil rights volunteers and supports interpretation 2 claim. So again, there's my fourth mark. Easy peasy. What have I done is I have matched them up correctly. I've said that they use different sources by, I love this phrase, different weighting. And again, I've said interpretation 1 uses X and Y, interpretation 2 uses X and Y. Easy question, so yet again, 4 out of 4. Right, and then let's have a look at the big one. Okay, right, so allow me to show you then the hardest question on the paper and how we answer it. Right, so I will dedicate some time to breaking up this question. Alright, so this, our command phrase, is how far do you agree? In this instance, you need to create an argument. Okay, our focus is Freedom Summer. Again, I'm not going to spend absolutely ages doing that, so I'm just going to highlight that to you. But our second order concept is interpretations. Alright, and what you must do is you must create an argument around the interpretations, and you must analyse the interpretations. The interps. What that means is this all comes under something called AO3, Assessment Objective 3, and that is evaluation of interpretations. This is the only question where you could spend 30 minutes writing. What I'm going to suggest you do is I'm going to suggest that you do an intro. That's do you agree, just straight off. Misspelled agree. Then what you're going to do is you're going to do interpretation 2. Then interpretation 1. Then a conclusion. Alright? And that obviously must be the same as that. Okay? I just want to highlight that we've got spag marks here, so you get marks for spelling, punctuation, and grammar. That's paragraphs, correct spelling, full stops, commas, and so on. However, I just want to highlight what you really need to make sure that obviously interpretation is the longest word ever, so what I'm going to suggest you do is that you make sure that when you are putting interpretation 1, the first time you do it, just put interpretation 1 brackets I1, and that means you never have to write down the word interpretation ever again. Alright, and obviously interpretation 2, you put I2, and so on, right? But what I would like to show you is the most important element of this session is I want to show you how to get full marks. It's a really hard question, so I'm going to put my success criteria right down at the bottom of my sheet. Okay, and again, this is split up into judgment, analysis, and contextual knowledge. Alright, and I'm only going to show you level 2, level 3, and level 4, and allow me to just demonstrate it. So in essence, level 2 is agree, disagree, conclusion. Alright, level 3 for judgment is explained evaluation. Per para. So do you agree with it? Yes or no? Why? Okay. And then level 4 is how convincing. Is their argument? Alright? And this word convincing, right? That's just how true is it? Okay? Right, so let's do analysis. So analysis, that might just have one quote. It might even just have a summary or a paraphrase. And there's definitely not going to be any inferences. For level 3, that's one quote plus an inference. For level 4, that's 2 quotes plus an inference, or plus inferences. In terms of your contextual knowledge, that's 1 fact per paragraph. In terms of level 4, it's 2 facts per para. And then we've got 2 precise facts. Okay, right, so I'll give you some options here. You can, right now, set yourself a half an hour timer, having a go at answering this question, and then coming back and self-assessing your answer. Or, as you are working your way through building your skills for this question, set yourself a 10-15 minute timer and have a go, and then self-assess your answer as we go through mine later on. Alright, so you've got 2 options there. Press pause, put all your electronic devices away, put all your distractions away, and set yourself either a half an hour timer doing the full thing, or a 15 minute timer doing half of it. Right, so ladies and gents, press pause. I'll see you shortly. Okay, welcome back. Right, so just to begin, I'm very conscious of my handwriting, so I'll read out my answer to you. But again, also a massive reminder, hopefully you've just spent either half an hour doing the full thing or 10 to 15 minutes making a start, and then you can self-assess your answer with mine. So the question was, how far do you agree with the view of Interpretation 2 about Freedom Summer? So again, here is my introduction. The reason why I suggest you do this is because if you run out of time and you don't have time to do a conclusion, you've already got your judgment here. Alright, so this is basically just a judgment mark, but we'll come back to that later. I partially agree with the view of Interpretation 2 that Freedom Summer was a negative experience for Black Americans and white volunteers due to the level of violence, whilst I also partially agree with the view of Interpretation 1 that it was successful. So I am a firm fence sitter with this question. Right, let's carry on. Interpretation 2 suggests that Freedom Summer was a hugely negative experience for participants. Right, so there's my summary. So that might be this more like a level 1 judgment just by doing that, but it's just a really good skill to have, and you'll notice it's the same as a how useful. This first little bit is the same as a how useful. For example, it says 15 were killed, many were beaten, and hundreds arrested, which highlights the highlights the violence and campaign of terror launched by the KKK towards white volunteers. It also goes on to say how Black Americans began to question the usefulness of working with white Americans, and the use of non-violent direct action, meaning that black participants were so disappointed and disheartened by the experience, they questioned how successful the tactics used by MLK were. So again, here is my analysis. And all I've done, as you'll see, is I've got quotes and I've got inferences, quotes and inferences. Alright, now what I need to do, and it's literally the same as how useful question this point so far. I know from my own knowledge that the summer itself failed to achieve the number of black voter registrations in Mississippi, and the KK's use of violence was echoed in the Selma March in 1965. But both of these events led to the Voting Rights Act in 1965, which banned literacy tests and prevented voter registration tests. Right, so again, there's my subject knowledge, and I've got two facts in there. One, the fact that it failed, but it led to the Voting Rights Act, and what was it? Okay, so again, this full first half of the answer, that's entirely how useful question. Now to get level 3 is I need to say, do I agree with it? This leads me to partially agree, as it was a bitter experience, but it did lead to the Voting Rights Act, which eventually achieved the goals of the Freedom Summer organisers. Right, so there's my do you agree? Alright, and that's level 3. So if I just stop there, if I do that across the whole board there, I'm probably, so long as I'm accurate, I'm going to get 12 marks. 12 marks out of 16. Right, let's have a look at my subject knowledge. I do find its claim... let's have a look at my level 4 now. I do find its claims about whether non-violent methods could achieve the aims of the civil rights movement. Oh my gosh. Its claims... Oh no, I have written it, never mind. I'll start that sentence again, forgive me. I do find its claims about whether the non-violent methods could achieve the aims of the civil rights movement unconvincing. It should say unconvincing. As Freedom Summer is the same summer of MLK's March on Washington, which led to the Civil Rights Act, meaning I find the author's claims less convincing. So again there, as I've just talked about, how convincing. You know, how good of a job have they done at persuading me to agree with them? And I don't think they've done a very good job, which is why I partially agree. Right, let's have a go. Interpretation 2 suggests that that it was a success. So there's my summary. For example, it says leadership skills were covered, meaning that the organisers had actively planned beyond the issue of voter registration and wanted to empower black participants. It also goes on to say that thousands of black Americans went to classes on how to register to vote and 17,000 applied, meaning that their classes were successful in attempting to educate how to pass the test and apply. Right, so again, there's my quotes and inferences. And I really want to sell here, it is literally just like a how useful question up until a certain point. I know from my own knowledge that black voter registration in the Deep South was extremely low, and states used literacy tests to keep black Americans from voting. And here's my contextual knowledge, and I hope you've read that there, that I ran out of time. This leads me to partially agree with the view of interpretation 1, as it did achieve what it intended to do, hopefully, with the Voting Rights Act. Overall, I partially agree with the views of interpretations 1 and 2 that it was a partial success for voter registration, but a tremendously bitter experience due to the low voter registrations and huge amounts of violence. My spelling on this one has been terrible, but let's just have a quick look here, and you probably gathered that I ran out of time, so let me show you where this answer would fit in, but you can see the general technique here, because that first paragraph is absolute perfection. I have got a summary of what it means. I've got plenty of analysis with 2 quotes and inferences. I've got 2 facts for it. I've said whether I agree, and I've said whether I find the argument convincing. So if my second paragraph was as good as this would be 16 out of 16. Okay? But again, I really want to express here, that's a how useful question. So it's the exact same technique as a how useful question. It only differs here. Okay, right, so if I were to just go straight back to my little success criteria once I've finished faffing about with sheets. Right, so have I explained evaluation per paragraph? Have I said whether I agree with it, yes or no? Well, yes, I have with both interpretations. So yes, I have. Have I done it? Have I said how convincing their argument? Only with one. Have I got quotes and inferences in both? Absolutely. Have I got precise facts? I certainly have in the first one. Let me just double check. I haven't necessarily got a great deal of precise facts, so I'd certainly probably come in here. So what's happening here is I'm sort of falling into the middle. So let's just have a quick look here. So have I got, if I were to just go A, C, K, right, so let's have a look at my judgment. I would probably say I'm a level 3 plus. My analysis is probably level 4. And my contextual knowledge is either level 3 plus or level 4 minus, depending on what type of examiner you would get. That would mean that we are somewhere between probably 13 out of 16. Plus my spag, I've done terrible today, so I'm going to give myself 2 spag marks, simply for my spelling error and one of my errors earlier on. But ladies and gents, you can see the technique there, dead easy to do. It's just initially hard at first, but once you've got the technique, it is a bang on question to do. Another mammoth session today. Thank you very much for your hard work. I'll see you next time. Bye bye.